Hey, what's going on, everyone? Not gonna lie, I've been procrastinating making content. January was really a great reflection month for me, but one of my goals this year is to create more regular content. So here it is. So today, welcome to episode 66 of the Davidson Hang Reflections and Lessons on a Life Worth Living podcast. So today I'm going to share with you 10 quotes from Kamala Harris's biography. For those of you who are listening to this way after, she was recently elected as the first female vice president of the United States. So it's a pretty exciting time for us for change. And also, she's South Asian, so her mother comes from Indian descent, and her father comes from he's African American. So a lot of progress all along. Obviously, we still have a long way to go in our country, but excited for to be a part of the change. So here you go. All right. So these are my top 10 tips or top 10 quotes and why they resonated with me so much. So the first one is, for as long as we've been a nation of immigrants, we've been a nation that fears immigrants. In the 1850s, the first significant third party movement in the United States, the so-called Know Nothing Party, rose to popularity on an anti-immigrant platform. In 1882, an act of Congress banned Chinese immigrants to the country. In 1917, Congress established a host of new restrictions on immigrants, including a requirement that immigrants would have to know how to read. In 1924, the number of newcomers allowed into the country from southern, and eastern Europe was cut dramatically. In 1939, nearly 1,000 German Jews fleeing the Nazi in a ship called the St. Louis was turned away from the United States. I wanted to talk about this quote because I think it's important to see like how far we've come. Obviously, we still have a long way to go, but America, well, like any human beings, like we're afraid of change. So it really goes to show that we've made a lot of progress, but in our history, there is some dark side of American history. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like I wouldn't live anywhere else. But it's good to keep in mind that there's a lot of darkness that comes with the lightness as well. That comes with light as well. Number two, children of immigrants also face a new kind of torment: bullying. Kids are being taunted by other kids, told that they would be deported, told their parents told their parents will be deported, and told that they should go back to where they came from. The cruel words and actions of one prominent, powerful bully in the White House have been mimicked and adopted as the rallying cries of bullies everywhere. But how do you handle a bully? You stand up to him. So, growing up, obviously, I'm Vietnamese, so there were many moments where I did get some pretty harsh remarks. Let's just say the media does not paint Asian males as the most masculine type of figures in the world. So, being Asian, we have a lot of like positive stereotypes that we work hard and that we're educated, right? But there's a lot of unconscious bias that happens as well when it comes to leadership opportunities and things like, for me, if I wanted to get promoted and if I wanted to dabble in management, there are a lot of unconscious bias that we still have a long ways to go. So, number three, whenever I travel to a country for the first time, I try to visit the highest court in the land. They are monuments of a certain kind, built not just to house a courtroom, but to send a message. In New Delhi, for example, the Supreme Court of India is designed to symbolize the balancing scales of justice. In Jerusalem, Israel's iconic Supreme Court building combines straight lines, which represents the rigid nature of law, with curved walls and glass that represents the fluid nature of justice. These are buildings that speak the same that could be said of the United States Supreme Court building, which in my mind is the most beautiful of them all. Its architecture recalls ancient Greece in the earliest days of democracy, as though you're standing in front of a modern day Parthenon. That was really beauty. It really shows to go that obviously, there's some loopholes and law is not perfect. Law is meant to be to change. Obviously, at one point, women were not allowed to vote, and African Americans were slaves, right? So clearly, there's a lot that in the past that has changed. But it really goes to show you that even though we think of lawyers, many of us think of lawyers as like money hungry, sleazy people. The majority of lawyers are good people trying to make a difference in the world. So it definitely helped me think about my perspective of where some of my assumptions are when it comes to meeting lawyers and attorneys and people like that. So number four, for most families, buying a home is the biggest purchase they will ever make. It's really a special moment in your life, proof of all of your hard work. You trust the people involved in the process. When the banker tells you that you qualify for a loan, you trust that she's reviewed the numbers and won't let you take on more than you can handle. When it comes time to finish the paperwork, it's basically a signing ceremony that feels like a celebration. When the bankers put a stack of paper in front of you, you trust them, you sign and sign and sign and sign. This is referring to the mortgage crisis. Obviously, we had a huge recession back in yeah, if anyone has watched the movie The Big Short, this is interesting. Being a homeowner, and feeling kind of like sort of the pressure of having a mortgage. I definitely think every human being should have personal responsibility, right? But sometimes you do rely and trust the system that, I think obviously it's a bit more strict now because of the crisis. But it really goes to show. I know when I was in college and I barely was making any money, I ran across credit card issues, and there's part of me that obviously like I should be responsible for my actions, which I am. Made a lot of significant strides in that area, but systematically, there needs to be responsibility on both ends where really they shouldn't have extended that much leverage to someone who's like barely making any money in college, who's uneducated, right? So just something to think about. Number five, but the real reasons lie deeper in our complex financial systems, of which the mortgage lenders are just one piece. Lots of powerful people bend the rules and build elaborate schemes to make money off of these bad loans. Even though most Americans didn't realize it, our economy has grown dependent on these scams. It was like building a tower of blocks on top of a balloon. And when the balloon popped, the entire economy came crashing down and we ended with the Great Recession. Yeah, this is a pretty deep topic, and I'm obviously not an expert by any means, but my thoughts on this was that look, like there's a lot of systems. If you know how to understand the game, whether it's tax deductions or there's a lot of rules that help us, for instance, become homeowners, right? That make it easier. But people who don't understand these super complex like accounting systems and all this are the ones that really don't benefit for it. So I do think educating yourself and surrounding yourself with people like I have a financial advisor. I work with Brandon and Prem who help me with a lot of these types of things who that can really help me. So just something to think about, surround yourself and educate yourself. Surround yourself with the right people and definitely read books and try to understand, because if you're not really, I wouldn't say taking advantage, but if you're not making most out of your situation, there's a lot of room for growth. So number six, in 1970s and 80s, corporate America, the owners of big companies decided to go its own way. Instead of spending the money that the companies earn on workers, the corporations decided that their only real obligation was to the shareholders, those who brought company stock and therefore owned a piece of the company. From big business perspective, it was those owners who deserved the lion's share of the riches, not the people who made the company run. So while productivity kept improving, a whopping 74% between 1973 and 2013, wow, that's crazy. That's a pretty big jump. workers' pay rose just 9%. In 1980s, President Reagan made the idea core to the Republican Party's view of economics. Cut taxes for corporations, cut taxes for shareholders, oppose minimum wage increases for workers, oppose the very idea of minimum wage, crush organized labor unions, the most powerful force fighting for workers' rights to fair wages and decent working conditions, roll back government regulations of corporations, ignore the human cost. I mean, this is a pretty controversial statement, obviously. I do think in general, a lot of America's success, the stock market has definitely increased a lot of people's net worth. I do think there should be a bit more of a focus on, just taking care as someone who came from the bottom, you know, did everything from waiting tables to, crappy jobs, or as pretty much making minimum wage, working at the movie theaters, at Quiznos, things like that. I do think that there could be more of an emphasis on taking care of employees in general. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great example of a company that really does take care of their employees. Obviously, not everyone has the privilege to work at a LinkedIn or has the network to work at a very good company like LinkedIn, but definitely something to think about. Number 7. Second, I choose to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it leaves people feeling uneasy. When you speak truth, people won't always walk away feeling good. And sometimes you won't feel great about the reaction you receive, but at least parties will walk away knowing it was an honest conversation. This definitely resonated with me because, there's times where I haven't said the truth for fear of conflict. But yeah, I think it's always better to be honest most of the time. Eventually we're gonna have to deal with the truth eventually. So why not be upfront about it instead of speaking behind someone's back? At least people know how you truly feel versus, um, just lying about it and pretending that there's nothing in the space. So, number 8. So there's only 3 more. So if you continue to listen to this far, you're a champ. You're a trooper for reals. In the spring of 1966, Cesar Chavez led a 340-mile march of Latinx and Filipino farm workers from California's Central Valley to its state capital in an effort to draw attention to the mistreatment and terrible working conditions of his fellow farm workers. That summer, the United Farm Workers was formed, and under Chavez's leadership, it would become one of the most important civil rights and labor rights organizations in the country. This is interesting. As someone who's lived in California, and whenever I get fruits, um, I do have gratitude for all the back breaking work that the Latinx and Filipino farm workers and people who are being of service to us more privileged folks who don't have to kind of hurt ourselves by going through. um yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a complex issue, but I'm glad that there are leaders like Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez who have sacrificed so much, and have helped the greater good and helped society move forward and overall. Number 9, when I travel to the country, I see that optimism in the eyes of 5 and 7, 10-year-olds who feel a sense of purpose in being part of the fight. I see it and feel it. And in the energy of the people I meet, yes, people are marching. Yes, people are shouting, but they're doing it from a place of optimism. That's why they've got their babies with them. That's why my parents took me in the stroller to civil rights marches, because as overwhelming as the circumstances may be, they believe, as I do, that there's a better future is possible for us all. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think when you're younger, you think the sky's the limit, right? And then somewhere along the ways, people tell you no, no, no. I had many, um, from guidance counselors telling me I would never become a dentist, to mentors and managers that told me I should quit sales. And it's discouraging, but I think there's optimism amongst all of us if we really tap into our inner intuition. So the last quote I'll leave you with is, in fact, in 2016, researchers found that more than half of Silicon Valley's billion-dollar startups were founded by one or more immigrants. That's pretty incredible. We're a nation built of immigrants, and yet we still limit the amount of immigrants, and we still fight change and immigrants that come into our country. Definitely food for thought. So I'm curious, if anyone else has read Kamala Harris's biography, and what your thoughts are on her book, The Truth We Holds. Well, hope you enjoyed this. Definitely subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Spotify, or or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Appreciate you making it this far, and cheers. Hope everyone has an amazing week ahead of them. Take care.